Roosters can get a bad rap for being aggressive and unruly, but I think that roosters can add huge value to your flock. So today I'm going to tell you how to raise roosters up right so they are gentlemen and not thugs. But before we get into that, we need to talk about what a rooster's job is. A rooster's job is to look after his hens. That is essentially his sole purpose in life, and all of his behavior is influenced by his role as the protector of his flock. He is there to make alarm calls, look out for danger. He's there to keep peace in the flock. When you have a rooster in your flock, you're going to have very minimal squabbling with your hens, so it makes for quite a peaceful hen flock situation. But that is his job. His job is to be there for his hens, to take care of them, to find them the best food, and to make sure that if those hens are having babies, that they're safe and protected and have good nutrition. So you have to think about your relationship with your rooster from that context. You are there to help him do his job. You are not there as another rooster or a boss rooster or part of the flock. You're there as an other who is there to take care of the flock and help the rooster do his job. So you want him to think of you as an ally. He can look at you and go, oh, you're the person who helps me do my job to look after my hens. You don't want to be seen as a threat or any kind of danger, or you don't want to invite a challenge from your rooster as well. And these are the sorts of things that people misunderstand and run into trouble when they're raising their roosters up. So we're going to talk about how we avoid those relationship issues when you're raising your roosters. Let's talk about the perfect scenario for raising up young roosters. Now, most people aren't going to have the perfect scenario, but we'll look at it so then we can try and modify what we actually have to work with to more closely match what I think is perfect. So a perfect scenario is having a rooster already in your flock that's over a year old and having mature hens that are past puberty and they're a calm, happy, well-established flock. And then you let one of those hens or more than one of those hens sit on eggs and hatch out babies and raise them in the flock. So that's perfect. The chicks are going to hatch out. They're going to be integrated into their family, the flock, straight away. They're going to learn how to be chickens, how to be polite, how to be respectful from their rooster father and from the older hens, their mother and their aunts, for want of a better term. So that is going to give you the absolute best chance of having great, gentlemanly, fantastic roosters. But most people aren't going to be starting there, and I didn't start there either. I do have that situation now, so my raising roosters is kind of on autopilot, but I didn't start there. So I'll tell you how I got started raising my first rooster. How I raised my first rooster, who is still here in the flock. His name is Kowalski. He's getting a little old now, but he is still the top guy. He keeps everybody in line. So I hatched him out. Well, I didn't hatch him out. My hens hatched him out. So I had a flock of mature hens. I had about 5 of them. And the head hen went broody, and I gave her some eggs, and she hatched out those babies, and the rooster, Kowalski, was one of those babies. That worked really well for the initial young rooster portion of raising them up. They learned to be respectful, they were pretty decent, the hens kept them in line. But where that became a not perfect situation is when Kowalski got old enough to be ready to take over the flock, to be the boss. Because roosters are always going to outrank hens, and hens are not necessarily always happy about that happening. So there was some conflict in my flock when that happened, when he said, all right, I'm the boss man now, I'm a grown-up rooster, and all you ladies need to listen to me. The head hen, the boss hen, was not into that. She was very angry about that, and they had some arguments. And what I ended up having to do for the peace of the flock was to rehome that hen because she just was not going to get with the program. And there was no extreme aggression, like there was nothing too bad, but it was just stressful for all concerned. So I rehomed her, and he has been a fabulous rooster. I cannot fault him in any way at all. He is just a great guy. So that is one way to do it, but you do need to keep in mind that just like I had some issues around the change of power, shall we say, that you might have those issues too, and you need to be flexible to see if you might need to rehome some of your older hens who are just not interested in letting this young rooster come in and be the guy. Now, you might be able to circumvent that by bringing in a mature rooster in the first place. Just go and get a rooster that's already 1 year old or older, bring him in, your hens will be like, yes, please, we like that guy. But this is a video about raising up young roosters and how you do that. So you can do it this way, but be flexible about how that might play out with your flock dynamics. Go and get a mature rooster and then you don't need to watch this video, or stick with me and we'll talk about hand raising chicks and how you get good roosters out of that situation. If you want to hand raise your roosters, so you're hatching eggs and raising chicks from the beginning, it's a bit trickier. I wouldn't recommend this. This is my least preferred option. I do understand that sometimes it's your only choice, but if at all possible, pick a different method. This is the most challenging way to get a well-behaved rooster because you start to blur boundaries with your young roosters, and that can continue through into adulthood. But with that being said, let's talk about how you can have the best chance at getting a great rooster out of that situation. So when you've got your little baby chicks in their brooder, as soon as you can tell which ones are girls and which ones are boys, be very careful how you handle the boys. You don't want to be too familiar with them. You don't want to be cuddly with them. You don't want to hand feed them. Now that's an important one. If you have a broody hen with her chicks, it's totally okay to hand feed those chicks or young roosters because they already know that you are not a chicken, that you are something different. Their mother has already set the relationship that the two of you are going to have. So it's okay to hand feed them. It's not going to cause confusion. But when you hand feed your hand-raised chicks, they don't necessarily know that they're chickens. They don't really know who you are in relation to them. So you're starting to put yourself at their level as a hen providing them with food. It confuses the situation. You get too familiar with those little baby roosters and they're going to not respect you. So be very careful how you handle them. You want to be very hands-off. You want to be very aloof, just matter of fact about it. Once your chicks are out of the brooder, they're 8 weeks old, 10 weeks old, you want to separate the girls from the boys. And this is because pullets mature much more slowly than young roosters, cockerels, do. So your cockerels, they're going to reach sexual maturity a lot sooner than your pullets do. And if you are in a situation where these are the only chickens that you have, that is a very out of balance situation to have. Those pullets need to be able to grow up without harassment from their hatchmates until they're sexually mature. So you want to separate the sexes, or your pullets aren't going to have a great time. And all those hormones are going to be raging and it's just going to be chaos. Just avoid the issues in the first place. This doesn't happen in mixed flocks because there are mature hens that are keeping the young roosters in line, and if you have a mature rooster, they'll keep them in line as well. And because there are mature hens available, when the rooster has reached a point where the hens find him acceptable, he's got an outlet for his frustrations. You don't want your roosters taking their frustrations out on pullets who are not actually interested in that kind of activity yet. Very important. Now, I always recommend people get started in their chicken keeping journey by getting pullets or older hens to start with. So if you've done that and this is just another round of chicks that you're raising, it's totally fine for those boys to go out with your mature hens. It'll help them learn to be respectful and keep in line, but keep an eye on them. Thank you, roosters, crowing around here. But keep in mind that you need to watch the situation if they start to be mean to the hens, or if you have got more than one rooster out there with the hens, they can form little thug packs and be quite mean to the hens. You don't want to let that behavior start. When you've got a mature rooster in the flock, he absolutely does not let that behavior start. So it's the further you get away from the perfect scenario, the harder you're going to have to work and the more you're going to have to be watching to make sure the welfare of your flock is good. So we need to talk a little bit about how many roosters you can actually keep, because it's very tempting when you've raised up your baby roosters and they're looking so good as they're going into rooster teenagehood to want to keep them all. But that is not good for the welfare of your flock. Now, if you've got lots of hens, you can absolutely keep more than one rooster, and I've done a video about keeping more than one rooster in your flock. But if you have a small space, if you don't have that many hens, you really need to be careful about how many roosters you have. More than one rooster to 5 or 6 hens at the absolute sort of minimum hen numbers isn't a great idea. So as you go into this process of raising up roosters, you need to have a plan for what you are going to do with the roosters you're not going to keep. You're either going to plan to eat them yourselves, or rehome them, or offer them to other people to eat. There is not a big market for roosters as pets. Most of your surplus roosters are going to be food. So make sure you understand that before you get into breeding and raising up your own roosters. It's very important. It's a hard choice sometimes when you get there, but you do not want a welfare situation happening in your flock if you suddenly have 10 hens and 10 roosters. It's going to be bad. Now, I can keep my roosters, my young roosters here, raised up in the flock until they're 4 or 5, sometimes even 6 months old without any problems, because I've got 2 mature flock roosters that keep them in line. That might not be your situation. Young roosters can start getting pretty rowdy from about 3 months old if you don't have sort of checks and balances on their behavior, so do keep an eye on the situation. That's how to raise roosters right, so they won't turn into thugs and they will be absolute gentlemen. Always remember, the relationship you have with your rooster is to support him to do his job of providing and protecting his ladies. If he sees you as an ally in his job, you won't have any issues in your relationship.